Valerie Mann, and I'm from WSG Gallery, and we have started a series of interviews with WSG Gallery artists that are more like casual conversations between us so that you can get to know a little bit more about us and our work and the ideas behind them. And today I'm here with Connie Cronenwett, who is a fabulous painter and with both oil and pastels, and draftsman and artist all around. But today she's going to interview me. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Connie, and see what kind of questions you have for me.
Great. Way back in 2009, when I first met Valerie, I was really impressed, Val, with your use of materials. Just a lot of very inventive, surprising materials, and also the fact that quite often you will take a subject such as the one we're going to discuss today, which is birds, and all these interesting iterations of the way you've used birds in your work. And I was wondering, has that been an interest since you were a little girl, or when did birds start to be a part of your life?
So I grew up on a farm and spent a lot of time outside. And on the farm we had a lot of animals to take care of, and other like yard and other stuff to take care of too, right? But
Right.
I think I was fascinated with birds because they were the one animal I didn't have to take care of, you know? And I felt like too, when you spend that much time outside, just sort of being quiet and listening and watching things, you learn so much. Uh, and I think for me, birds are beautiful, of course, the colors and the different body shapes and stuff, but I think their behavior is one of the things that's most fascinating to me. But yeah, I've
Well,
loved birds for a long time.
yeah, I wanted to show you a piece of yours that I bought, which is called House Finch. And if you could share that with the viewers, that would be great, because here you've taken um, a really interesting chunk of old wood with nails in it, and you've got Scrabble letters. You've
No,
got,
I wasn't able to download that, Connie. I
oh, okay.
apologize. I
So
should
I'll
have had
just
you brought
describe
it
it.
and hold it up
Yeah.
to the screen.
Actually, if you want, I can get it and
Yeah,
show
go
it.
go
Okay.
grab it. I'll put up the other I'll get the other video ready. Um,
Okay, here we go.
oh great. Yeah, actually that's probably better
Yeah.
than the photo even. Yeah, I
So,
that's interesting
so
because the
there's,
chunk of wood was from my when my neighbor had some work done on her porch. Um she had this chunk of wood left, and it was her house is built in the late 1800s. So the pieces of wood in that house, there's not wood like that anymore. When they say 2x4s, they're
right.
actually 2 inches thick, and so it was fascinating with the nails stuck out of it too. I just feel like it has a record of its life, the nails and
Yes.
wood and the holes from the worms and stuff. So
And and I believe the feathers were printed. You rolled them up with ink.
yes,
This
so
is a
I
yeah, watercolor egg.
yeah, and
So,
that one is a Xerox transfer.
and
That
a
the
Xerox
nest is a
transfer.
Xerox
So
transfer.
all very beautifully kind of riveted with really nice little nails. So it's just an example of all the different ways that you use materials and are exploring this little creature, the house finch. And then I know that you also have done quite a few watercolors with birds as your subject.
Yeah, let me screen share the pieces that a couple of the pieces that I brought up. Some of the so yeah, I love birds. I love feathers. It seems like I'm always seeing feathers when I'm out hiking and things or in my yard. And so I decided a few years ago to just approach the feathers in a different way. The piece that you held up they were inked up with a brayer and put through a press, which I love because it picks up so much texture. But I do watercolor painting as well, and I wanted to really sort of explore these with color and shadow. Shadow is a recurring theme in my work, and these are actually on the screen here. They're larger than what they are. They're pretty much life size when I paint them. And
They're
this,
beautiful.
thank you. This one's ink and watercolor. And one of the things I do for some of those fine lines is I use a pen nib and pull a little bit of those fine lines.
Some of those lines of the watercolor out. Beautiful.
Yep. Yep.
And what about, I know you also went to U of M or
Natural History Museum.
Natural History. Thank you.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
What did you find there?
So it was really interesting. I'll scroll through a few of these really quickly, but again, these are watercolors with some vintage game pieces. And what I found there was a whole in their ornithology collection, a whole collection of these beautiful little birds, and they're like jewels. You go in there and you open these big cupboards, pull out these flat files, and they have all these beautiful little labeled birds in there. And some of them are from, as old as when the university started in the late 1800s. And they're all labeled and tagged. Even the writing on the little labels is so beautiful because you can tell that it's done with pen and ink. But I went there and was doing some drawing of the birds, and it made me start to think of them as little figures, So I decided to approach them as I would figure drawing, and look at them, and then use my watercolor and try not to get uptight in painting these little beautiful things. That's sort of a trick, to try and paint something this size but not get uptight about it.
Right. And I can't believe that our time is over half gone. But after this, you made some group studies in wire, right?
That's true. So I will get to that piece. So these were little drawings of silhouette. I consider them to be drawings in wire, little silhouettes of these birds, and this was several different shapes of a sparrow. And I started to link them together with wire, and wanted them to hang away from the wall so that they would cast these beautiful shadows. Again, coming back to that idea of shadow in my work. As a three-dimensional artist, one of the things I found early on was a lot of people who buy art can have a hard time dedicating 3D space in their house to, an object on a pedestal is something we see
right.
or at a gallery, but in our houses, it's kind of an invitation for disaster. So I end up making some artwork that hangs on the walls. This one, in particular, was really influenced by that trip to the museum, like you said.
I was reading about a show of Alexander Calder's work, and he too worked in wire and with figures, and then put them on the wall and let those shadows work. So you are working within a sculptural tradition.
Yeah,
That's
I love
great.
his work.
Yeah, me too.
I love it. So this piece is I think it's 120 little 140 little birds that are all based on a goldfinch shape. And they all have like a little wire armature, and some of the things are sewn and some are crocheted wire. But in this next detail, I'll show you this little, let me get rid of our picture for a second here. This little wire bird with the red sequin flower shapes. Those came from my grandmother's collection of sewing notions. When she passed, I inherited a bunch of things from her, especially sewing stuff. And I've held on to those things, thinking, oh, I'll use those in the future, and I actually have. So let me go to the next piece here, because it might be. Oh, here we go. This is another one, and I don't mean to. Maybe you have a question for me, but.
Well, I'm glad you brought up your grandmother. This is one of my favorite pieces, and you talk about use of materials. You've used a plastic. You've dipped them in a plastic.
Yeah. So it's the wire form, and there's some weaving going on with wire in that bird, so it has some mass. And then I dipped it in this stuff called Plastidip, which is like super toxic, I found out. But before I used it, I was like, oh, I've seen that stuff before that they dip tool handles in. I love the way it looks. So it sort of forms an interesting rubbery membrane.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I
Val,
really
can you,
wanted to just play with those
I don't know
shadows again.
if I should push you around. It's supposed to be 10 minutes. Is that right?
Yeah. Oh,
Oh,
let's go another couple minutes
we're
because
running it. Okay.
I know.
So, do you have a, yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah, just another
Look at
example of
those
those shadows.
shadows.
Yeah.
They're amazing.
Thank you.
Beautiful. So I know, you know, people who have followed your work may know that you've done some really terrific installation work. And this is a combination of one of your homemade gowns. And is this from a flour sack from
Yeah,
the
so these are
farm?
from seed bags from my
Seed
family's
bags,
farm.
yeah.
Yeah, and I decided I wanted to make an elegant gown. It's actually a Vogue pattern, which are some of the tougher ones to sew. And I just pieced all these bags together so I had some whole cloth to make the gown. And then again, you see those birds flying. This piece is called the Real Cinderella Dress, based on the Cinderella story of the bird sort of helping finish the gown. And yeah, again, these birds flying off. Um,
Gives a wonderful setting. And
Thank you.
so segue into, yeah, here's a transitional piece, I kind of think,
Yeah,
where,
so the materials are, I get so excited by materials and seeing what I can use, and what I can create with those. And again, this is very shadow heavy, and this piece is called Letter to My Daughter because I envision it as like this writing motion, like these loopy loop
yes,
sort of
yeah,
cursive motion, but
yeah.
it's got like wire and rubber and leather and twine, from hay bales and old electrical cords, and actually has one of my dreadlocks because I thought, oh, that would be perfect. So it's mixed
Yes.
in with the twine. You can't really tell it unless you really know, but I'll show a little detail of that one. But yeah, like to your point, the materials, I'm so fascinated with my materials, and that brings me to grandma's tablecloth. um, so when I mentioned earlier that I inherited all these sewing things from my grandma, I also inherited these crazy tablecloths, and she made these by hand. And I honestly, I never remember us using them as a family, like even for big family gatherings. She must have used them at some point because some of them had stains on them. But I decided that this year, as I cleaned out my house, I was not going to keep these, but I was not going to get rid of them without having used them for something fun. So they've all gotten to be used for some kind of a gathering, a birthday party, or Thanksgiving, or something this year. And then they've gotten cut apart and turned into a sculpture.
And this is the actual net from the grandmother's tablecloth that she used netting as part of her tablecloth.
It is. And Connie, like, come to find out, a netting tablecloth is not very practical. It catches on your
Oh,
clothing when you sit up
right.
next to it.
But I
It,
think your grandmother loved different materials just like you do.
I think you're right. She did. And she was such an important person in my life. She was one of those people in your life where you think, I will never be able to breathe when they're gone. Right.
Oh,
And come to find out I could. And I don't, very few days go by without me thinking of her. But she loved making. And one of the things I realized as I sort of felt bad about getting rid of these tablecloths was, for her, it was the act of making that was the most important. She loved to use it for the family, but like I said, I don't remember us ever using them. Maybe she used them once and maybe before I was born, but
right.
you know,
And this particular photo doesn't show quite the three-dimensionality of each of these pieces. Is like a little, um, almost like a hat shape or a little, I don't know exactly how, it's
yeah,
somewhat amorphous, but it's comes out from the wall, what, about 4 or 5 inches, right? Six
yeah,
inches each
exactly.
one.
Exactly. Yep. And I ended up dyeing some of the netting with just different things like sumi ink and beets and turmeric, and uh, I tried black tea, overnight worked, but I just wanted some sort of subtle colors, and yeah, it's a fun piece.
This has, and what size would you say this is? About 4 feet wide,
Yeah,
five?
it's about 4 feet by
Four?
about 3.5 feet. Yep.
It
Actually, it's
has,
the Scarab Club now. It's in a show there.
yeah, it has a wonderful presence on the wall. With it has a mystery about it, which is so interesting to see this mysterious these mysterious forms that form one form that have come from such a humble beginning as netting. But it and your title is really fun to. I love the way you play with um, sort of double meanings of things and let
Yeah,
the viewer kind of figure that out.
yeah,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Connie. Thanks a
Well,
lot.
we're coming to the end of our interview, Val. It's seemed way too fast to get a sense of what you do and how you're inspired. But it's been great to see this little mini journey evolve. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Connie. It was really fun to talk to you. Thanks for the interview.